What's going on, guys? It's your boy Nick coming at you today on the channel with an update to my Metaphys deck profile. This is something that I've been working on for a really long time, ever since that ban list dropped like back at the end of February, I think it was. And they banned like all the Nemesis stuff, like Arch Nemesis Protos and whatnot. I immediately started working on an update to Metaphys. However, I was just really having trouble trying to find something that I was truly happy with. That the first update, the first profile of Metaphys that I made on my channel was about over 6 months ago now, and that video got a lot of good reception. It's actually the second most viewed video on my channel in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh content, and a lot of people really seem to like that deck. So I want to thank everybody who, took the time to watch my video and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me. We are currently on our way to 400 subscribers. We're almost there, guys. Please, if you're watching this right now and you're not subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and like this video and leave it down in the comments below how much you like Metaphys, because I'm almost positive that there isn't very many Yu-Gi tubers doing Metaphys related content in general. Maybe for Master Duel, but I'm focused more on the TCG format, and that's what this particular list is going to be focusing on, is TCG format. But with that being said, for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do live duel videos, deck profiles, all kinds of different Yu-Gi-Oh related content. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. And we're going to dive right into this update to my Metaphys deck. I'm going to tell you guys right now that this deck is drastically different from the original version that I uploaded about maybe 6 months ago now. This version is a lot more trap focused and plays completely differently, but I will assure you that it still does what Metaphys like to do, and that is banish almost everything. So with that being said, we're going to hop right into this profile, and of course you know how we do. We're going to start off with the monsters, and actually the monster that we're going to start with is already here. This is Metaphys Ragnarok. We are only playing one copy of him in this particular version, and you guys are probably scratching your head because in the every other Metaphys version that you the deck profile that you see online, everyone's always maxing out on this card. And don't get me wrong, it is good, but this card is no longer really the focal point of the deck. What it is, it's a level 4 worm tuner monster, and when it's normal or special summoned, you can banish the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, he gains 300 attack for each Metaphys card banished by this effect. So basically, like when you summoned, you banish the top 3 randomly. Hopefully you hit some Metaphys stuff, he gains attack, and then, your Metaphys stuff triggers in the following standby, which is all good and awesome. He does have another effect where if he inflicts battle damage to the opponent, you can special summon a level 5 or higher Metaphys monster from your deck, but banish it during the end phase of the next turn. Now, that's a really cool effect because most of your Metaphys main deck monsters are extremely high level, and they don't really have any ways to, special summon themselves. So most of the time, they're like hard garnets or bricks, basically, when you draw them. You really don't want to see them in hand, necessarily. But Ragnarok is nice because you can just special them out from the deck for free. And a lot of the high-level Metaphys monsters do have effects that trigger when special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster specifically, which Ragnarok does allow for. So overall, I think it's really cool. He is a great card, but again, in this particular version, we are just running one copy of him. And you'll understand why as soon as we get through the remaining part of the profile. So one copy of Ragnarok. Moving on, we're playing 2 copies of Metaphys Decoy Dragon. Now, Decoy Dragon is the only other low-level Metaphys monster in the theme. He's a level 2 worm pendulum monster, and he's got a very unique effect because his pendulum effect and his monster effect are exactly the same. And I mean it, they're literally the identical effects. Like, the pendulum effect and monster effect they match. They're worded for word exactly the same, minus a few small differences. But what he does is, when your monster is targeted for an attack, you can target one of your Metaphys monsters that's banished or in your graveyard, banish the Decoy Dragon, and if you do, special summon that monster in attack position. So again, this is just another way to get your high-level Metaphys monsters on the field, whether they're in your graveyard or in the banish zone. You're able to special summon them back by banishing this, and keep in mind that, a lot of the high-level Metaphys monsters do have effects when they're special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster specifically, so this also contributes to helping enable those effects. His pendulum effect, again, pretty much the same thing. When your monster is targeted for an attack, target one of your Metaphys monsters that's banished or in your graveyard, banish this card, and if you do, special summon that monster in attack position. The only difference between his pendulum effect and the monster effect is the monster effect states that during the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished, special summon this banished card. So this is pretty cool. Like, you can actually banish this, you know, during your combos, and then on the next standby phase, Decoy will come back to help insulate your board, because now if your opponent tries to attack anything, you can trigger the Decoy Dragon's effect, which I think is pretty cool. But as a 2 of it's fine. I wouldn't recommend maxing out on it at 3, but you definitely want more than 1 of it, especially in this particular version. So we played 2 copies of that. Now we're moving on to some of the high-level ones. We're starting things off with 2 copies of Metaphys Nephthys. Now, Metaphys Nephthys is actually a really cool card. Basically, if it is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, you can banish all set spells and traps on the field. That does not target, doesn't destroy it, just as soon as it's summoned and it was summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, just banish all set spells and traps in the field, including your own. So something to keep in mind. But this is just super, super punishing against like really control-y back row kind of decks. You just sweep their whole back row. Absolutely insane. Also, if this card is banished, during the standby phase of the next turn, you can shuffle this banished card into the deck as cost, and then add a Metaphys card from the deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. So on summon, or special summon I should say, assuming it was summoned by a Metaphys monster, you get to banish all the back row, and then if this card itself is banished on the following standby phase, it shuffles itself back and then becomes like a searcher for the theme. You search any Metaphys card from deck to hand except itself. So at 2 copies, it's perfectly fine. Also, the stats aren't terrible. It's 2400 attack and 1600 defense. So like if you summon this off of Ragnarok, for example, like during the battle phase, you sweep like any remaining set back row they have, and then just punch them like directly or hit over something for 24, which is pretty nice. So 2 copies of Metaphys Nephthys. Then we are running triple copies of Metaphys Daedalus in this particular version. Daedalus and Nephthys are kind of similar in the sense that when Nephthys is summoned by a monster effect, you banish all the back row. But when Daedalus is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, you can banish all other face-up special summon monsters on the field. That is a really strong effect. Like, it's pretty much just like almost a front row wipe. And it's very difficult to stop unless your opponent has like a hard negation for this. Otherwise, they're losing their board. I mean, because like most boss monsters nowadays will have like inherent protection from like targeting or like destruction protection. Daedalus honestly doesn't even care. As soon as he's summoned and was special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, all special summon monsters on the field are getting banished except all other special summon monsters, I should say. Excuse me. He's also 2600 attack, which makes him pretty formidable. And he, just like Nephthys, has an effect that if he's banished, during the standby phase of the next turn, you shuffle this banished card into the deck as cost, and if you do, you can banish a Metaphys card from your deck. So he enables some really cheeky plays by being able to shuffle himself back in the following standby from the banish zone, and then banishing another Metaphys card from your deck, which is really, really cool. So we max out on Daedalus in this version because I think he's the most useful of the bunch. And for the last 2 main deck Metaphys monsters we play, is just 2 copies of Metaphys Tyrant Dragon. Now I've like fought with myself whether or not I should be playing 2 copies or 1 of this. A part of me wants to cut it down to a 1 of, but then sometimes I do appreciate having the second copy. It's more like a love-hate relationship with this card, because if you want my opinion, it's like the most lackluster of all the Metaphys monsters, in the sense that yes, it is the biggest one in terms of stats, being 2900, and it does have a somewhat of a really cool effect when it's summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, given that if that happens, he becomes unaffected by trap effects, and if he attacks a monster, he can make a second attack in a row. So that's pretty good for like trying to close out games or like push for like insane amounts of damage. And the fact that he's unaffected by traps makes him really useful too, especially in this particular variant that we're playing, since we are more of a trap focused version of the deck. But what I dislike is like his banished effect is during the next standby phase after the turn he was banished, he can shuffle himself back into the deck as cost and then special summon a Metaphys monster from your hand. Now that's cool because that is a way to get them out of your hand if you're bricking on them, but the problem is that like requires so much setup. Like if you're bricking on Metaphys monsters in hand, then there's a pretty high chance that you're not going to be able to get the Tyrant Dragon banished in the first place, meaning that like his effective special them from hand is never going to come up, and you're just going to be stuck with a brick hand. So that's why like I've kind of fought with, you know, cutting it down to a 1 of, but I still kind of appreciate it at 2, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether you think it's worth playing 2 of it or 1 of it. But that's pretty much it for the Metaphys monsters. Now we're going to move into some of the other main deck monsters we play, and this is where things are going to get drastically different from the original version I was playing. So I've already stated that this particular deck, or version of the deck, is more trap card focused. So as a result, we are maxing out on a playset of Prufinesse, the Tactical Trapper. Now, there's probably some of you watching this who have never even seen this card before in your life. Let me enlighten you to how awesome this card actually is. He's a level 4 Dark Fiend monster. 1800 attack, 0 defense. So pretty formidable stats for a normal summon. 1800 is usually the benchmark of most good monsters. Basically, if he is normal or special summoned, you can banish a trap card from your deck. Semicolon. This card banishes a trap from your deck as cost, ladies and gentlemen. That means that even if the remainder of his effect gets negated, doesn't even matter. You banish the trap card as cost. And you're going to see why that's important. The more, once we get further into this profile, it'll start making more sense why this effect is so insane. But basically, you banish any trap card from your deck as cost. Then, assuming the effect resolves, you can increase this card's level by 1. So he banishes the trap, and then he becomes a level 5 monster. And there's some really cheeky things you can do with that. Additionally, he does have another effect that you can trigger during your main phase, and that effect is you can target a trap card in either graveyard, banish it, and if you do, increase this card's level by 1. So again, he can target a trap in either grave, banish that trap, and then increase his level again. So he's like a level modulator, which is pretty cool. Then he's got a third effect where if this card in my possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, whether that be battle or card effect, I can set one of my banished normal traps to my side of the field, which is pretty awesome. So overall, Prufinesse, the Tactical Trapper, is really, really cool. And more or less, he's definitely the card we want to open with. And he's somewhat of a starter for us. And that's part of the reason why we decided to cut down on Ragnaroks. Because now, instead of normal summoning Ragnaroks, you know, for like our turn 1 plays, we usually want to be normal summoning Prufinesse if we can. So we max out on this card at 3 copies. I think it's absolutely insane the amount of advantage you can get off of this card, and you'll see why, as like I said, we progress through the profile. But moving on, the next monster we play is 2 copies of Dark Eye Nightmare. This is another interesting tech choice. It's another level 4 Dark Fiend monster, 1700 attack, 1700 defense. This card has a few interesting effects. The first of which is, once per turn, if this card would be destroyed by battle, you can banish a trap from your graveyard instead. Now that is not an activated effect, that's just a condition that applies while he's on the board, similar to any other protection effect like, you know, Salamander Great Balinx banishing itself from grave and whatnot. So that's pretty cool. He can protect himself from battle once per turn by banishing a trap. Now, when we get to the trap cards, you're going to understand like why banishing traps in this deck is so absolutely gas. But so that's his first part of the effect. Then he's got additional effects where you can banish up to 3 traps from your graveyard and apply this effect based on the number of traps banished. So if we banish 1 trap from the grave, we can draw 1 card and then place 1 card from the hand on top of the deck. If we banish 2 traps, we can draw 1 card. If we banish 3 traps, we can draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. So this card is actually very interesting, and it's something that you definitely want to see like mid-combo or mid-game, because it can generate you a lot of free advantage. It's not really a starter necessarily, given that you do need traps in the graveyard already for him to be useful. So opening this card isn't really that great necessarily, which is why we're only playing 2 copies of him and not 3, like Prufinesse, because Prufinesse is more of a starter, whereas this would be like more of like a mid-game extender of sorts. But 2 copies of it nonetheless. It's a great card, especially in this particular version of the deck, and I can't express how awesome it is to resolve this card when it does go off. So 2 copies of Dark Eye Nightmare. But now we're going to be moving into a small engine we play. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this. We are on triple copies of P.U.N.K Ze Amin, or Ze Amin. Probably butchering the name, guys. Sorry. You guys are probably very familiar with the P.U.N.K engine. It's been kind of everywhere in the format. We're playing the P.U.N.K engine in this deck to facilitate a certain combo line, which we'll discuss later in the profile. But it's almost too good not to play. The P.U.N.K engine enables some really awesome... It offers you some really awesome extension that you otherwise wouldn't have. And that's something that I think Metaphys has always struggled with, was like getting extension. Because they were a very normal summon reliant deck. You know, you used to normal summon Rag and hope to God it resolved. And then if it did resolve, you hope to God that you like banished like Necroface and a bunch of other good targets, because if you didn't, the deck really didn't go anywhere. It was very slow and it lacked a lot of follow-up. So this is just a very easy engine we can splash into this deck to give it that extra push it needs, just in case our normal summon does get stopped or disrupted by some means. Or we can also use the P.U.N.K engine to bait any disruption preemptively. That way, if we did want to commit to the normal summon, we can commit to the normal summon knowing that we've already baited any hand traps or disruption the opponent might have to throw our way. So triple copies of P.U.N.K Ze Amin. For those of you that don't know how it works, it's a level 3 Psychic Tuner. Basically, you can pay 600 life points to add a P.U.N.K monster from the deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a P.U.N.K monster you control and it gains 600 attack. So triple copies of Ze Amin, or Ze Amin. Then we're on the 1 copy of Deer Note and the 1 copy of Foxy Tune. Just one of each of these. You don't really need to max out, especially on the Deer Notes. I think Deer Note's definitely a 1 of. Some people prefer to play Foxy Tune at 2 or even 3 copies, depending on the build. I think 1 is all you need, especially now that this card's been spiking in price. If you're like on a budget, you really don't need to max out and buy a playset necessarily. I think 1 copy is more than enough, especially for this list and the amount of testing that I've done with it. The Ze Amin searches the Foxy Tune to your hand, and then Foxy Tune can discard himself and another card to then special the Deer Note from deck, basically, and that's kind of how the combo works. But now if you draw the Deer Note can reveal another P.U.N.K in hand, and then you special summon either Deer Note or the P.U.N.K you revealed, which is pretty cool. And then again, if you draw Foxy Tune can just discard itself and another card to search the Ze Amin, and then Ze Amin can then search the Deer Note. So it's a very interesting, engine. It's very, concise. There's not that many cards that are involved in it. What's nice about Deer Note is that if she's sent to the graveyard, you can target a P.U.N.K monster in your grave and accept the level 5 monster and special summon it. So she can either revive the Ze Amin or the Foxy Tune, depending on what kind of play you're going for. So it just gives you so much free value. Not only is it an extender, but it's just a really strong card nonetheless. And it's something that I definitely wanted to mess with during testing and whatnot. So then up next, we got triple copies of the Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan. This is definitely another form of extension we play in the deck. And, I didn't want to add too many Swordsoul cards because it's very easy to start adding Swordsoul stuff because, you're like, yeah, this is great, it helps the deck. But then at the end of it all, when you start looking at the deck, you're just playing Swordsoul with the Metaphys engine splashed into it, and not Metaphys with a small Swordsoul package, if that makes any kind of sense. We decided to run triple copies of Longyuan as just another extender, just in case our normal summon gets snuffed or we get disrupted by some form. Longyuan's great because you can discard another Swordsoul card or another worm monster from our hand to special summon this card from the hand. And then if we do, we can special summon a Swordsoul token, which happens to be a worm type tuner monster, water attribute level 4 monster. So it just summons a level 4 token tuner to the field in addition to himself. And it's just an easy level 10 synchro play. And when he's sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can burn the opponent for 1200 damage, which does come up a lot, especially in time, for game 3 or whatnot. So triple copies of Longyuan just is a really great extender. This isn't part of the reason, why, drawing the big Metaphys monsters, the high-level ones, doesn't feel so bad sometimes, because you can actually just discard them to special the Longyuan from hand anyway, which I think is really great. So triple copies of Longyuan is just another extender in the deck. Then here's something that's going to probably freak a lot of you out. We're on 2 copies of Visas Starfrost. This is brand new out of Dimension Force. This is a recent addition to the deck. I wasn't necessarily testing with this card up until about a day or 2 ago, to be honest with you. And I started testing with it, and I like it a lot. This is just another form of extension, basically. If our combo or whatever gets disrupted, if he's in our hand, we can target a monster we control that has a different type and attribute than this card, destroy that monster, and if we do, we get to special summon the Visas Starfrost from hand. He happens to be a level 6 tuner monster as well, which he can help make some synchro plays depending on the other levels that you have on field. But more importantly, he's also very, very good at breaking you out of the Swordsoul token lock. And what I mean by that is, for those of you that understand how Swordsoul works, when you resolve any Swordsoul card that produces a token, while that token's in the field, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except to synchro summon. Now, usually that's not a problem, but there are going to be some French cases where you don't want to synchro or you just can't. but you want to break yourself out of the lock, and Visas Starfrost is a very good way to do that, because he can just pop the token to then special himself, and now that the token is no longer on board, you're not locked into Synchro specifically, but also to Visas just acts as another tuner extender, and overall it's been working out pretty good. Is it needed? No, but it's been something I'm testing with, and it does seem pretty cool. Just 2 copies for now. I don't necessarily think you need to play 3. Maybe you argue just playing 1 of it, but then, you know, you run the risk of not really seeing it. So 2 copies, I think, is more than enough. And then for the last monster we main deck, 1 copy of Fairy Tale Snow, fresh off the list. This card helps the deck out immensely. If you can get her in the graveyard, she's just a quick effect disruption during the opponent's turn by banishing 7 of the cards from literally anywhere. And since Metaphys want to be banished, this girl's good. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Now we're going to jump into the spell cards, which is very few of them. Triple copies of Emergency Teleport. This is just to special summon our Ze Amin from the deck to help get our Punks combo started. So again, it just functions as another extender, which definitely the deck, you know, needed the help, because like I said, Metaphys was very normal summon reliant. 1 copy of Gold Sarc, of course. You know, being able to banish any card from deck and then adding it to your hand on the second standby is always a plus, especially since a lot of the cards you banish generate advantage when they're banished. And then 1 copy of Asymetaphys. Just 1 copy of this in this particular version. I know in the previous build I was maxing out on this, but in this version I think 1 is more than enough. You really don't need to see this card, and you don't rely on it as much as you used to either. But it's a very good card. Basically, once per turn you can banish a Metaphys card from your hand, and if you do, you can draw a card. It's really, really cool. It does have an effect where if a Metaphys monster is banished during my turn, all monsters on the field lose 500 attack and defense except Metaphys monsters, and that attack debuff does stick. So 1 copy of that. And that's it for the spells, guys. Now we're moving into the traps, and this is, I think, what makes the deck very, very fun. We played triple copies of Metaphys Ascension. This is a normal trap that states we can discard a Metaphys card as cost to then draw 1 card, then we can banish a Metaphys monster from our deck. So it's literally a discard, a draw 1, and then a banish 1, all in 1 card. It's crazy. Then, if this card is banished, we can add a Metaphys card from the deck to our hand except a copy of itself. So literally, this card, if you get this card banished, it turns into like a Rhoda for any Metaphys card in your deck, which is really, really cool. The only downside is that you cannot use both the on-field effect and the banish effect in the same turn. I wish that it wasn't worded like that, but it is what it is. So you have to pick either or. So like if you activate this card on field and utilize its effect, but then you manage to banish 1 in the same turn, you're not able to use the banished effect it has, and vice versa. Like if you use the banish effect and then you wanted to activate 1 on field, you couldn't. It's 1 or the other. So outside of that though, the card is insanely crazy, and that's why we max out on it. Then we play triple copies of Swordsoul Blackout. This is just another really fun, spicy tech that we play. You target a worm monster we control, and 2 cards the opponent controls destroy them. So it's almost like an Icarus attack of sorts. But what's cool about this is that if this card is banished, we get to special summon a Swordsoul token. Worm, Tuner, Water, level 4, attack 0, defense 0. And then again, while the token's on the board, we're locked under the Swordsoul token lock, or restriction, where we cannot special summon from the extra deck except to synchro summon. But this card is just really great. Now keep in mind, we play a card called Prufinesse, the Tactical Trapper. If you normal summon the Prufinesse and banish this for cost, keep in mind he does banish for cost, this gets to produce a token, and then Prufinesse gains a level, which he becomes 5, and the token you summon is a 4. So that's literally a free level 9 synchro right there. And even if they did negate the Prufinesse, you still banish the trap as cost, so the only drawback is that he wouldn't gain the level. He would stay at level 4, which means you can take the Prufinesse and the token and still make a level 8 synchro, regardless, which is, like, really awesome. So triple copies of Blackout, really good at also, like, breaking boards and just, like, dealing with threats you otherwise would have trouble with. Then we're on triple copies of Swordsoul Assessment. This is another normal trap. This card is actually the bread and butter. You can target a face-up monster you control, banish up to 5 Swordsoul cards and or worm monsters from your graveyard. And if you do that, that monster gains 300 attack for each card banished this way. So that's the on-field effect. So you just target a monster, any monster. You banish up to 5 Swordsoul cards and or worm monsters from your graveyard, and then that monster gains 300 attack for each card banished. And that attack buff sticks. So that's the on-field effect. So this is a really funny way to like boost something up like to insane amounts of attack while also banishing cards that you want banished to give yourself advantage later on in the duel. And then the graveyard effect is, or I'm sorry, the banished effect is very similar to Blackout, where if the assessment gets banished, you produce the Swordsoul token, level 4, obviously. So overall, it's a really good trap card for the theme. Very cheeky. And then we're on 2 copies of Boo Boo Game. I still laugh every time I say that. Basically, it's a normal trap. During damage calculation, if a monster battles, we take no battle damage from that battle. That's not the reason why we play this. The reason why we play this is that if this set card in my control is destroyed by the opponent's card effect and sent to my grave, I can target up to 2 normal traps in my grave, except Boo Boo Game, and then reset them to my field. They can also be activated this turn. So since you're playing a trap-heavy deck, you'd have to assume your opponent at some point is going to try to out your back row. If they manage to pop the Boo Boo Game, I basically get to reset 2 normal traps from graveyard back to field, and they can be activated that turn. So it's a super hard punish for them. And then, of course, you play 2 copies of Trap Trick, because, again, we play a lot of normal traps, and a lot of those traps have effects when they're banished, which Trap Trick enables. So that's just really insane. You get to banish one and then set one with the same name, but then the one you banish triggers the effect. So that's, like, really, really cool. And then for the last 2 traps we main deck is 2 copies of Metaphys Dimension. I used to just play 1 copy of this, but with this particular version of the deck, I think 2 copies is optimal because of the amount of times you're banishing Metaphys cards on the opponent's turn. You can easily trigger the Dimension effect, and this card basically becomes really good spot removal. Because whenever a Metaphys card in your possession is banished, you can target a card on the field and then banish it. So that's really, really awesome. So 2 copies of Dimension. It's a 46 card main deck, and we're not playing any hand traps. And the reason for that is because through the P.U.N.K line, we actually go down the Chaos Ruler, or through Chaos Ruler, and then make the Zombie Vampire, and we mill a bunch of cards, and that's how we set ourselves up for like graveyard shenanigans. But I just don't think that hand traps are necessary in this deck. Like whether we go first or second, we have so many extenders that we can usually push through any kind of disruption, and I just don't think that hand traps, especially this format, are that impactful unless you're playing like crazy blowout haymakers like Nibiru, for example. But I just couldn't find a space to fit the hand traps, and I didn't want to ruin the deck's consistency, so that's why we're not running any. But anyway, moving on to the extra deck, it's a lot of synchros. We're playing 1 copy of Dark Dimension Soldier. Really cool level 5 synchro. We can banish a card from hand to then target one of our banished dark monsters and special summon that monster in face up or face down defense position. So really cool level 5 synchro that's generic to make. Has a lot of good synergy with the deck given that we play a lot of dark monsters now like Prufinesse and the Dark Eye Nightmare. 1 copy of Metaphys Horus. Obviously, you know, it's a Metaphys card. We're playing Metaphys. It'd be stupid not to run this. It's a very good generic level 6 synchro. Gaining various effects, my favorite of which, forcing your opponent to give a control of a monster they have to me, which is also hilarious. 1 copy of Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing. We all know what this card does. It serves as a spot removal for the deck and also can special summon a worm monster from your deck when it's destroyed by battle or by card effect, which is really good. 1 copy of Chaos Ruler. This card is absolutely nuts. This is how we utilize our P.U.N.K combo to gain access into this. And then if this card resolves, we pretty much win the duel. Absolutely gas. It just allows you to excavate the top 5 cards of your deck. You add an excavated light or dark monster, and then send the remaining cards to the graveyard. Free pluses. Also, this card has a chaos monster effect where you can, out of the graveyard, it can banish a light and dark, just revive itself. Which again, that's just like free pluses, especially when you can banish Metaphys cards to do that. So really, really cool there. 1 copy of Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, just another generic level 8 that we can make relatively easily that has really good effects. 1 copy of Groza, the Tyrant of Thunder. This is another spicy tech that I decided to include in this list. It's a level 8 Fiend Synchro requiring a tuner plus a non-tuner Fiend monster specifically. In case you didn't notice, Dark Eye Nightmare and Prufinesse are both Fiend monsters and they're non-tuners. So we can, off of the Swordsoul token we produce a lot of the time, and those monsters we can make this. And this card is effectively a Effect Veiler on legs. During the opponent's main phase, we can discard we can target an effect monster on the field, discard a monster, and if we do, negate that monster's effects until the end of this turn. Also, if we discarded a Fiend monster for that effect, we gain it like protection or various amounts of it. But overall, Gross is a really cool tech choice that we're running in this deck, and I've had a lot of success with it. Then we're playing 1 copy of Virtual World QB Shenshen. Very easy to make this card going first off the Prufinesse line. Like I said, when you summon Prufinesse, you banish the trap as cost. If it resolves, usually you're banishing a Swordsoul trap to reduce the token, and then you take the token and the Prufinesse, who's now level 5, to make the Shenshen for almost literally free. It's absolutely crazy. Then for our level 10s, we play 1 copy of Tenyi, 1 copy of the Zing Longyuan, and 1 copy of Time Lord Progenitor Vorpgate. These are like my choice of level 10s. Now, you don't necessarily have to play these ones specifically. You could easily play like Ruddy Rose Dragon or even a Baron or Baronet de Fleur if you chose to. I do own both copies of Ruddy Rose and Baronet, but I just didn't feel the need to run either of those 2 cards. I think the Tenyi, the Zing Longyuan, and Vorpgate offer pretty much everything you would need. It's pretty well rounded. I mean, obviously we know what Tenyi does. He's just a house of a card. He can protect himself. He can banish cards from field or graveyard. He just gets really, really big for no reason. Zing Longyuan is also really good in certain matchups, just being able to quick effect banish special summon monsters and activate his spells and traps, and then burning your opponent in the process. Very annoying to deal with. And the Time Lord Vorpgate is just a very funny tech card that I'm testing with. It's just a generic level 10. And when it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. You take no battle damage from attacks involving this, but when it battles, you get to banish all monsters your opponent controls into the end phase. Absolutely crazy card. So I've been testing with that and having a lot of fun. 1 copy of Psychic End Punisher. This card is absolutely insane. If you can get your copies of this, I urge you to buy it soon. And then we're on the 1 copy of Geomathnic Final Sigma as our level 12 synchro of choice. 1 Zombie Vampire for our P.U.N.K line. This card, if it resolves, you win the game. And then 1 IP Masquerena, and then 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon. This card is definitely a flex spot. You could easily run whatever Link 3 or Link 4 of your choice. Doesn't have to be the Bomber Dragon. But that's pretty much it, guys. This is what I've been testing with for my updated Metaphys list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. For those of you who are watching this, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you guys so much for your time.